A round clearing began, a still pool of grass, hidden in the heart of the forest. The trees grew right up to its edge, and then they stopped, like somebody had cleared it on purpose, nipping out the border precisely. Could have been ruled with a compass. Quentin picked his way toward it. Lush, intensely emerald green grass grew over lumpy black soil. In the center of the clearing stood a single enormous oak tree, with a large round clock set in its trunk. The clock trees were the legacy of the Watcherwoman, the legendary but quite real time-traveling witch of Fillory. They were a magical folly, benign as far as anyone could tell, and picturesque in a surreal way. There's no reason to get rid of them, assuming you even could. If nothing else, they kept perfect time. Quentin had never seen one like this. He had to lean back to see its crown. It must have been 100 feet tall, and it was massively thick, at least 15 yards around at its base. Its clock was stupendous. The face was taller than Quentin was. The trunk erupted out of the green grass and burst into a mass of wiggly branches like a kraken sculpted in wood. And it was moving. It was black. Nearly leafless limbs writhed and thrashed against the gray sky. The tree seemed to be caught in the grip of a storm, but Quentin couldn't feel or hear any wind. The day that he could perceive with his five senses, was calm. It was an invisible, intangible storm, a secret storm. In its agony, the clock tree had strangled its clock. The wood had clenched it so tightly that the bezel had finally bent, and the crystal had shattered. Brass clockwork spilled out through the clock's busted face and down onto the grass. Jesus Christ, Quentin said, what a monster. It's the Big Ben of clock trees, Janet said behind him. I've never seen one like that, Elliot said. Do you think it was the first one she made? Whatever it was a Fillorian wonder, a real one, wild and grand and strange. It was a long time since he'd seen one, or maybe it was just a long time since he'd noticed. He felt a twinge of something that he hadn't felt since Ember's tomb. Fear and something more. Awe. They were looking the mystery in the face. This was the raw stuff, the main line, the old magic. They stood together, strung out along the edge of the meadow. The clock's minute hand poked out at a right angle from the trunk like a broken finger. A yard from its base, a little sapling sprouted where the gears had fallen, as if from an acorn, swaying back and forth in the silent gale. A silver pocket watch ticked away in a knot in its slender trunk, typically cute, Fillorian touch. This was going to be good. I'll go first. Quentin started forward, but Elliot put a hand on his arm. I wouldn't. I would. Why not? Because clock trees don't just move like that, and I've never seen a broken one before. I didn't think they could break. This isn't a natural place. The hair must have led us here. Sorry, it's magical hair. It's not a magical rabbit. I make that mistake throughout the book. It's not the same thing. It's like turtles and tortoises. I know they're different. The hair must have led us here. I know, right? It's classic. Julia shook her head. She looked pale. There was a dead leaf in her hair, but she was back on her feet. See how regular the clearing is, she said. It's a perfect circle, or at least an ellipse. There's a powerful area effect spell radiating out from the center, or from the foci, she added quietly, in case of an ellipse. You go in there's no telling where you'll end up, Elliot said. Of course there isn't. That's why I'm going. This was what he needed. This was the point. He'd been waiting for it without even knowing it. God, it had been so long. This was an adventure. He couldn't believe the others would even hesitate. Behind him, dauntless, wicked in stillness. It wasn't a question of courage. It was like they'd forgotten who they were, and where they were, and why. Quentin retrieved his bow and took another arrow from his quiver. As an experiment, he set his stance and shot the tree trunk. Before it reached its target, the arrow slowed like it was moving through water instead of air. They watched it float, tumbling a little, end over end, backward in slow motion. Finally, it gave up the last of its momentum, just stopped 5 feet off the ground.